Hello and welcome. I'm Angela Antetomaso at Forbes. Today we are here for this Webit Global Impact Forum with a panel titled Energy Transformation and Innovation Enabling Resilience. I'm very happy to introduce you today our wonderful guests, and I would like to start from Pablo Koziner, President Energy and Commercial at Nikola Corporation. Pablo, welcome, and can you please tell us something about yourself?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel and to be here with you today. I've been at Nikola for 2 years now, and my responsibility in the energy and the commercial side is to have energy infrastructure available for the heavy-duty trucks that we are commercializing, both for battery electric, which requires charging, and the hydrogen fuel cell trucks that we'll go to market with in the United States at the end of next year. So very exciting times at Nikola. Previously, various executive jobs at Caterpillar, where I had a 19-year career.
Thank you, Pablo. And I would like to introduce now Robert Denda, CEO at Gridspertise. Robert, welcome. And again, can you tell us something about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm CEO at Gridspertise, and Gridspertise is a spin-off that we created and launched last September, coming from Enel, largest utility, and especially in the field of grid operations, present in so many countries with 75 million customers. And basically, Gridspertise is focused as a tech company, and we have all the solutions, hardware and software that serve grid digitalization.
Thank you, Robert. And I would like to introduce now Chris Romer, CEO at Project Canary. Welcome, Chris. Can you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. Chris Romer, 25 years on Wall Street, politics in the state Senate in Colorado, serial entrepreneur, serial social entrepreneur. My latest company is a B Corp. We've been rated one of the top 5 in the planet for doing well by doing good. Project Canary is a data analytics and environmental assessment company committed to accelerating the path to net zero. And what we do is focus on methane measurement and emissions, as well as freshwater use. So think of us as like the Moody's and S&P, in which we're actually going to solve climate change. Because by the way, climate change is a math problem. And to solve a math problem, you actually need really accurate measurement. That's what we do.
Thank you so much, Chris, and we'll discuss about this. We'll talk about this very soon. I would like to introduce now our other guest, Manik Suri, founder and CEO at Therma. Welcome, Manik, and can you please tell us something about yourself as well?
Pleasure, Angela. Thanks for having me as part of this discussion. It's a great group. My name is Manik Suri. I'm the founder and CEO at Therma. We're based in San Francisco, California, where we're building clean cooling technologies to reduce the emissions profile and improve the grid resilience of distributed energy resources using refrigeration and HVAC systems, cooling assets, as a way to help power the grid. We work across industries, particularly food, the food supply chain, and then also in healthcare areas where cooling matters for human health. But because of the emissions footprint of cooling, the planet's health often suffers. We're trying to alleviate those challenges and be part of the energy transition. Great to be here.
Thank you, Manik. And obviously, this is actually the topic we're going to discuss today, what to do for the climate and how to address all these issues. Now, let's start with the questions. My first question is actually connected to what we've seen in the last couple of years. Many challenges, obviously, from the pandemic to the war in Ukraine and many, many other things connected to all of this. What do you think is happening now? Do you think we need to rethink the way we live and travel and function on a global scale? If any of you could give me, or each of you actually could give me, their point of view will be fantastic. Can we start with Pablo, please?
I mean, it's interesting times, and it seems like we're always living in interesting times, whether it's pandemics or wars, and then the result of that, supply chain shortages. I think what we're seeing is an environment of much greater awareness of the need for carbon reduction for our planet. That, the case is made, and there's a huge impetus at the government level and the private sectors that want to see this happen. And so there's great momentum behind that. You add global politics to the mix, and then you get energy security issues where alternative energy can reshape the way that countries depend on energy sources and the progress of renewables, the impact that can have, both in the reduction of carbon intensity and energy independence. So there are all of these things that are happening in terms of how the world wants to progress, to reduce carbon emissions, to have greater energy independence, to have better efficiency, to live better quality of lives, that are all coming together for good reasons and tough reasons. But there's no question that the momentum to decarbonize, to move to alternative energy is very strong. And everyone on this panel is in the right place at the right time, trying to participate in making that happen.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the right place at the right time. As I said, this is an absolutely crucial topic at the moment. Robert, can you tell us about your experience and what your take is?
First of all, I agree with what Pablo's just said. I think there's the momentum, there's an acceleration actually going on. I think many things lead to this acceleration of shifting energy usage towards electricity. That's what we are seeing. So it's becoming a reality, that people shift towards electric mobility, electric cooling, heating, cooking, you name it. So that's, I think, one really important effect that we see right now. And at the same time, of course, what Pablo also mentioned is this growing and acceleration of distributed generation using, let's say, putting clean energy generation in the system, in the energy system. And of course, we see this is accelerating all over the world. That's not something just in the US or just in Europe or wherever. It's really happening all over the world. And I think all those things that happened in the past and the awareness of the impact on the climate will accelerate this even further in the future. So many companies like us, for example, we work really on solving those issues, right? Putting digital technologies in the grids and allowing these type of changes to happen. But it's a phenomenon that we see, and we also see that we see a lot of collaboration ongoing now. Maybe in the past there were very isolated things happening in different countries, in different regions, by different actors. And now there's a lot of collaboration starting, right? So the stakeholders speak to each other and try to resolve those things in a certain ecosystem. And I think that's a great opportunity that we really need to catch now and to work jointly on those challenges.
Thank you. And obviously now I would like to ask Chris. I'm sure, Chris, you agree with all of this. And what is your take? Mostly seen, consider that you have been sitting on the Senate and looking at all of this from a very, important point of view, I would say.
Yeah. Well, first, there are 2 billion people who are living in energy poverty, unlike anybody on this Zoom call today. And so to solve that problem and not recognize the 2 billion people that we can't lock into an energy poverty position, it's just wrong. It's just morally wrong, and it's not going to work on the planet. So you have to think through how you simultaneously take the industrialized world to a very clean transition at the same time without denying 2 billion people their right to live a good life. It's just really important. And so just think this through, because it's the externalities here and the ability to get a market solution, not just a regulatory, but a social contract on the planet in how to do this. Just as an example, the entire world's GDP was $1 trillion when the steam engine got introduced. It's now $100 trillion in less than a century. Go look it up over the millennium. So the ability to have energy drive GDP and growth is incredibly important. The problem is we built all that with an externality on carbon that never got pulled into that equation. For 100 years as we've been doing this, we've been building this amazing thing that's giving this wonderful standard of living while we're about ready to kill ourselves by basically letting the planet overheat. The solution to this is actually bringing market forces in, because there's no way to rationally, there's no way to rationally do this without actually putting economics into the equation and having a true, authentic price on carbon that's driven into the equation, so we can simultaneously bring 2 billion people out of energy poverty and get to net zero. Both are doable, But you cannot kid yourself. We do not live, as we call in the US, we're Lake Wobegon, where all the children are above average. Right now, everybody on this phone call is saying we're better and we're greener and we're this. There is no standard yet for judging who's actually above average in solving this problem and whose brand equity needs to be destroyed because they're a laggard. That regime is coming, and we're excited to bring the actual data that knows, like, is Chobani yogurt better than Danone yogurt on its climate footprint? I don't know the answer to that. Is the Impossible Burger truly better for the climate than a Buffalo Burger? I don't know the answer to that. We're gonna know the answer to that soon, and consumers and the millennial rebellion is gonna lead the way. As you can tell, I have pretty strong opinions on this topic.
Definitely, but this is actually what is important to have here today. And actually, I would like to ask Manik, what is your take, Manik, on this?
Excellent comments have been made in the last few minutes. So I broadly agree with so much of what was just said. I think that I would add to Chris's latest remarks that there is I think, particularly powerful role for technology-driven innovation and for folks that are willing to either break things or do things differently and move quickly. The combination of shifting consumer sentiment, the power of people and the ability to tap people power using better information, surfacing and making more accountable the externalities that we've tolerated and absorbed for 100 years, and internalizing them into the cost of doing business, into the cost of products, into the cost of capital, into the valuation of businesses. I think that there's a whole ecosystem of companies and innovators that are emerging to both reduce the emissions that we're generating every day and to make people and individuals increasingly aware of what the cost of their actions and their products and the services they enjoy actually are. So I think that technology innovators and technology-driven operators have an outsized advantage, and we need to tap that community. And I say this as someone who worked in government. I worked in the Obama White House doing economic policy. I trained as a lawyer, and thought I was going to build a career in the public sector. And while half my friends still work in government in the US, federal, state, and local, I think that while government actors can help set the rules of the road and can catalyze some of these changes, the fastest path to taking immediate action is actually to leverage a lot of the rapid innovation and willingness to break things that comes from early movers and innovators. So I'm very excited about the possibility in this sector of technology innovation. I don't think it can solve all problems. There are some problems that are hard to solve with technology, but I think this is a category of problems.
And that surely is. And sorry, Manik, thank you for your point of view here. Obviously, one of the biggest questions now is, the many challenges on a global level. What are your own challenges in your work, just around you? Again, I would like to ask a question starting from Pablo, please.
Well, challenges and opportunities. Certainly, global supply chains are stretched in any industry that you look at. There are challenges in terms of getting supplies. There's inflation. We're in the nascent stage of a lot of this technology. Not that it's brand new in the case of electric vehicles or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, but for the heavy-duty transportation market, these are new products requiring new levels of infrastructure. And the beauty of what we're trying to do at Nikola is the coordination of bringing both together at the same time. Because you can have a truck, but if you don't have the energy infrastructure to support it, or you have energy infrastructure and no trucks to consume the energy, then it's very hard to make a business. Bringing these things to market in a coordinated way and scaling is obviously a challenge, but also a very exciting opportunity. So it's a mix, and some of these things are short term and others are longer term, but yeah, that's what we're seeing now.
Absolutely true. And actually, Robert, what is your experience when it comes to utilities?
Yeah, look, let's say what we do basically, we look at the grids, electricity grids. No, that is really maybe a hidden piece, but a very important piece in that equation. Because at the end, as you just said, also Pablo just was mentioning, in order to make sure that this shift towards electricity and cleanly generated electricity can happen, you need to have the revamping of the grids. The grids were built 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So they were built in a completely different way. And now they need to cope with that insertion of distributed generation, with the peaks of power consumption, which is good. And this is a very good way to to get to this cleaner energy system. But of course, the grids at the same time need to be available, need to ensure the quality, need to make sure that the customers can actually serve energy also to other customers, to the grid back. They are integrated in this electricity ecosystem. So what we are doing in that field is really to provide the digital technologies, so devices that you install in the field that manage and control and measure, of course, as well. As Chris correctly was saying, the first thing is always to measure what is going on. So measure how the power flows, electricity is flowing, see where are the bottlenecks, how is everything going, and do this in real time. This is the key here, because at the end, electricity is a real-time system. It needs to change in function of what is happening in each moment, and many things are happening. So whenever you switch on a load, when you plug in your electric truck, or whatever you do, it changes the local, let's say, situation, the local dynamics. And so we work, let's say, in the back end there to help utility companies to really revamp their grid with digital technologies, with the devices, with IT solutions, with edge computing capabilities, with connectivity and solutions based on all of that, that help you to predict and to manage in real time those challenges. And this is an enabling, let's say, function in the background, but it's so important. Without that, you cannot get the overall electricity system to run. And as I said also before, this is something that we see really at global level, and we are doing this, offering, let's say, this to distribution system operators, to power grid operators all over the world, and really to revamp their grids and being able for this future integration, for this, where the future, as we said before, is not so far away. It's now, right? The future is what's happening. That's what's happening now. So they really, we need to accelerate there.
Thank you, Robert. Chris, what is your experience at the moment? What are the biggest challenges and opportunities, obviously?
Okay. Well, I have the gift to being in my 60s, so this is probably my 7th rodeo. In my 4th rodeo in life, I was a state senator in 2008 or 9, where we actually closed the first coal plant on the planet and converted it to natural gas. And I remember in those days when we were putting some of the first renewable portfolio standards, we were aghast that we could actually convince our local utility to commit to 20% renewable energy. So the arc of change comes, it bends towards the right direction, but there's a lot of change management involved here, because look, in 2010, I had no idea that basically natural gas could be worse than coal if you leaked more than 2% of the methane tip to tip. That was a shocker. And so we have this energy system that has wires and pipes. And the truth is we have to decarbonize both. One of the things you know about resilience, and we're learning this in Europe, is having one singular system creates one failure point that's really catastrophic. Having multiple systems, both of which are going to get decarbonized, and knowing that reducing methane, which thank God is only in the atmosphere for 10 years, we can actually reduce the climate heat by getting rid of all of these methane sources from human beings over the next decade. That gives us the long-term vision of actually decarbonizing the wires and moving to the deep decarbonization. The problem in a lot of this politics with environmentalists is absolutism, which I believe in solution 10, and we're at solution 2. The problem is numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 will determine the envelope of CO2 we face when we get to 100% electrification. And I'm a Democrat for fracking, which is really complicated to understand when I'm radically in favor of net zero on the planet. But the truth is the data matters, and we need to stop playing religious politics when math and science should drive this equation. And look, I'm not positive. There are people who argue all of these pipes are stranded assets. Maybe that will be proven by lots of actual math and science. What I know as somebody who's done about 10 billion in infrastructure is it's really expensive to throw away a bunch of infrastructure that can be decarbonized. So what we do all the time is challenge utilities in blue states to think about energy systems and decarbonizing both of the energy systems. That's really hard because a lot of people believe in environmental absolutism, which is I have the answer and I'm going to ignore everything until my answer is believed. And we're basically going to screw ourselves for the next decade when we actually could lower the temperature on the planet. And that's hard work because in some cases, some of the far left on 100% electrification are in more denial than the people on the right who deny climate change. That's a sobering fact.
And that's a big challenge for sure, Chris. Thank you for your take. Manik, you also work with government. What is at the moment your biggest challenge and again opportunities and achievements as well?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ink has been spilled on the challenges of working with government as a, from the market perspective. I think it's the art of the possible. Working with government and achieving change is really about aligning incentives to do what's pragmatic and possible. I think to some of the points that were just raised, there are folks that have a pragmatic, solution-driven approach that are data-driven and empirical. And I think what we found is there are a set of actors in and around government and utilities that understand one can take advantage of new solutions to create double bottom line wins. You can actually achieve better margin, better growth, reduce the risk of liability, reduce the asset downtime, reduce grid failures, while also decarbonizing the built environment. Those are the kinds of folks we try and partner with. Happily, in states like California, New York, and some of the early adopters of and developers of energy management programs like demand response and others, there are places in the US and internationally where those kinds of folks do either get elected or get appointed into the right positions in the public-private sphere and actually make the rules of the road possible for innovators to act. We've had success in some of these markets deploying our technology. We're focused on decarbonizing built environment assets in the cooling sector, which are responsible for huge emissions because of refrigerant leaks, energy overconsumption, and product waste. And we think that retrofit is part of the solution. To get to net zero, you need to do a lot of things. One thing we need to do is use less energy on assets that are run inefficiently. And I'm struck constantly by the waste we have. We have hundreds of schools across the US that use our technology at Therma. When you think about refrigeration and HVAC, we asked folks, how many people turn refrigeration off during the out months? Schools closed in the summer and winter. Well, no one turns refrigeration off. People run the asset at full tilt, generally speaking. It's a little bit like walking down the block in a city late at night and seeing all the lights on in the skyscrapers when there's no one in the buildings. We run assets, dumb and inefficient because energy was cheap in the 20th century and the planet subsidized it. That's just wasteful and easy areas to attack as on the path to net zero. So there are folks in the utility and government side that recognize that.
There are definitely lots of steps that need to be taken and issues that need to be addressed here. Very, very interesting, what you all are saying. I would like to ask now, also about the energy sources. Let's talk with Pablo actually about hydrogen, for example. Pablo, how critical is hydrogen for zero emission transportation and why?
So for us, when we look at heavy duty transportation, when you need an energy source that can give you long distance and to be able to do it with lighter weight than batteries, we view hydrogen as a preferred fuel source. It is the most efficient that we can find in terms of what we can use in the vehicles, and obviously how it gets produced is incredibly important, right? Because there are many ways to produce the hydrogen that impact the carbon intensity. But for applications that require large volumes long distances, and the least amount of disruption to how customers run their businesses today versus other sources like battery, hydrogen provides a very, very important solution. And our challenge is to make it to produce the hydrogen always with an eye on continuous reduction of its carbon intensity, and to be able to build an infrastructure that can scale at a cost that makes sense for the heavy duty transportation business. So hydrogen has been around for a very long time. Lots of research has been done on it. The fuel cell vehicles are commercialized, especially in light duty. Our job is to scale it so you can reap the significant benefits of hydrogen in the heavy duty transportation, which is one of the most focused areas to lead to some real decarbonization.
Thank you, Pablo. And Robert, I would like to ask you, because you were talking before about the fact that you are digitalizing now the grids. Can you tell us more about this, and also what the role of this modernization in the energy transition?
Yeah, well, it's a big piece. As I said before, you need to digitalize the grids in order to be able to glue together those different pieces and really modernize the system. If you don't digitalize the grids, it's very difficult to cope. You would need to reinforce a grid, an electricity grid that it's the vastest grid that is out there, right? It goes to every single household, every single industry, every single point of supply. And you would really to reinforce a big part of that, right? And this takes a lot of time and would take a huge investment. And the fast way of doing this is, of course, you still need to reinforce some pieces, but everything else you can do through digital technologies. And the digital technologies that you put in at the end enable you also, to what was said before, to integrate with what is happening at the customer side, right? If the customer has an efficient cooling system, has with algorithms that can work, and has let's say, electric vehicle charging, or has generation capabilities, or has storage maybe installed, all of those things need to come together in a digital way. And this is what the digital technologies can allow for, right? And once you have all of that connected, then the system becomes really efficient, because then it allows you to, first of all, to ensure that 24 hours of the day without any supply interruptions, you can give supply to all the customers. You can ensure this. On the other side, you can involve all the different stakeholders that can even then participate in this energy system. And it becomes then a challenge of all, right? And doing this with cleanly produced electricity is, of course, one way, and there the grids are helping a lot. So it's really this glue, let's say, that brings all of those pieces together, and it's one option. It's an important base and cornerstone of what we need. Let's say without that, it's really you would not get rid of. You could not integrate clean energy in such a massive way that we need to, and you could not, let's say, do the shift towards electricity usage for everything, basically, and this is why it's so important. Yeah.
Innovation and digitalization, obviously very, very important in all of this process. Chris, can I ask you, how could companies meet ESG and energy standards? What's the best way, and how much, obviously, innovation can help in this case?
First and foremost, use science and data. In the industry I'm working right now, which is decarbonizing fossil fuels, which is actually doable. 3 years ago, their sustainability report was a picture of a rig with some animal, usually Bambi, in the foreground, and then how much money I gave to the food bank. And that was about as much data as we got in those reports. We've now moved ESG to the pad level. The revolution of our world is there are now non-negotiable IoT devices that can be on 24/7. They eat services, they sit there, they measure, and they give you an accurate, very molecularly accurately ESG. We can then paint the molecules or the oil coming off the pad with a carbon footprint, with a water attribute, an ESG attribute that will trade through the system. And then over time that Impossible Burger, which is not as low carbon as you think, has got to buy, because making up an Impossible Burger just takes a lot of energy. So those Impossible Burgers need to be sourced with measured environmental attributes as they bring it into that plant to grow those proteins, right? So where ESG is going is from high level, everybody in Lake Wobegon is above average because there's no accountability, to the granular measurement that you'll be disqualified in your brand if you don't sum both your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and trust me, water. And all of you utility people out there need to pay attention to this. People are going to go to war on water. Water is going to be the first real fight in climate change. And so you have to judge not just the CO2e in your products, you have to judge water, and you have to then put a fully transparent ESG scoring that's at the pad level. That's the revolution that's coming. And over time, and I'll say it again, the millennial rebellion is they're going to judge. They're going to go to gas stations depending on their score. And the score of that supply chain is going to define whether that product is on Wholefield's shelves or basically if it gets thrown over to some other department, okay? And I know it's hard to realize this is really coming, but this is, I mean, look, this is a bigger deal than us becoming digitized with the internet. This tsunami of the clean energy transition is literally a 100-foot wave that's going to flow through this, and the dinosaurs are going to get killed. And every CEO has got to decide, am I a dinosaur that's going to get hit by that wave, or I'm going to learn to surf the wave? And the only way to surf it is with authenticity, measurement. Climate change is a math problem. You have to measure it, and you have to measure your way to net zero. And consumers are going to get ruthless about this if you cannot prove that you truly are better than your competitors. And I know this is a lot of debate about this, a lot of debate right now in public utility commissions. We're working it all over the country. The argument is that low-income ratepayers and ratepayers will not pay a green premium. That's bullshit. They will.
Thank you, Chris. Manik, I wanted to ask you also, how important it is then to do all of this and to lower energy emissions when we're looking at supply chain. Now is obviously a very hot topic. How important it is to start, from the source and get, to the consumer end, lowering emissions.
Well, I think it's just because of the order of conversation here, I find myself agreeing with a lot of things that are said before me on these questions. But we sell to a lot of consumer-facing brands. We sell business-to-business solutions to companies like McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell and 7-Eleven and Hilton, Wyndham, Marriott. These are companies that care about how consumers perceive their brands. And increasingly, there is pressure on business buyers that have an energy orientation or responsibility for energy and facilities to start internalizing their supply chain. That's because there is pressure, both regulatory, coming from new policies and new rule making that's putting pressure on public companies and then on private companies, but also from the consumer sentiment. People want to know what kinds of products and what kinds of businesses they're frequenting. I think that is a shift that we're seeing. So a lot of buyers are interested in a carbon calculator. We have a carbon calculator we're adding into our products that basically tells you how many, CO2 equivalent actions your, installation of our IoT-enabled solutions provides. And, I think if you go to an airport in many parts of the world, you'll see those water dispensers that show you the number of plastic bottles that you actually eliminated by using the water dispenser. I do think that simple visibility combined with trusted data on the back end is powering a lot of consumers' actions and will power a lot of consumer behavior. And so business buyers care about their supply chain. They're rational. They're not doing it purely out of the interest of the planet or because they want to make sure that they're seen, positively by environmentalists. They're doing it because the median consumer cares and will care more, and they know it. And so that's why they're taking action. And that's fine. That's how society changes over time. That's how norms shift. We need a lot of different levers to shift society. We need regulation. We need massive amounts of marketing. Chris says that climate is a math problem, but I think climate has a marketing problem. Climate change is not cool. It's not sexy. It's really abstract. It's really diffuse. It's a classic economics, diffuse gains and concentrated costs, which means it's really hard to get people to care. It's really, really challenging. It's got a marketing problem, but the solution lies in math and science. And I think if we can market the problem to people that you should actually care and solve it with technology that's driven in and rooted in math and science, I think there is opportunity.
And Manik, I wanted to say you're right, because I'm asking the questions in a certain order, and then you're always the last one. I will start with the next question with you, and then we'll go back to Pablo at this point, because actually you just said something that is very important. We need to have people care. And this is obviously, one of the main topics in this discussion. How do we make people and society aware of the issues? Because there are people who are studying this, people who are, obviously working on this, many people who are trying to advertise this need to do something about that, but there are millions, probably billions of people who have no idea what we are talking about today. And how do we make them aware? How do we make them being part of this change? And mostly, how do we really get there? What is the future of energy at this point? Manik.
It's something I spend a lot of time thinking about, Angela, since I'm constantly, selling the dream as a founder in the category of recruiting people, trying to sell the dream, the possibility of improving and why we should care about improving sustainability. I would say making it personal is a theme that's resonated in my life and in the kinds of colleagues, and whether it's investors or new team members or customers, trying to connect it to people's lived experience. I live in Northern California. I grew up in California. There were wildfires 35 miles from my house a couple of years ago, where my parents still live. I was in Napa a couple of years ago when the worst wildfires in the state's history hit. We were literally vacationing there that week. And I grew up going between India and the US. My grandparents live in New Delhi. Every time I go back to Delhi, and I've been going back for 30 years, more than 30 years, the air pollution and the quality is worse and worse. So I think experiencing some of these climactic events and some of the challenges around ESG from a lived experience has helped me realize, wow, this is a problem we need to solve. It's not a problem our grandkids need to solve. Now, how does one bottle that up and make it possible for others to experience that without having to live through a wildfire or have to go somewhere where the air is hard to breathe? I think we need to tell stories. We need to get people to see the human cost continuously. Otherwise, it's just an abstract, someday down the road, someone's going to have to deal with this, and I don't want to think about it. So I think making it human, making it real, making it personal, I'd start with that.
Thank you, Manik. Chris, what is your take on this? How can we let everyone in the world know that something needs to be done, and each one of us could make a difference? We could start from our small world, microcosm, and make a difference from there.
So in my lived experience, one of my favorite things, and not my favorite titles, wasn't actually, other than grandpa, wasn't senator, wasn't CEO, it was actually coach. And why do I tell that story? Because I took over a girls' high school lacrosse team that just didn't think they could win. And there's a psychology when you don't think you can win, you don't know how to change your mind. Right now, the problem with climate change is people just think it's too big. They don't know what to do. They're obsessing about it. Young people are not having children because they don't want to bring them to the world. What a friggin' tragedy for this world. You have to teach people that incremental building, you got to win the first game. You got to win the first inning. And there's slowly but surely a middle group in Congress. Go look at Senator Hickenlooper, look at people like, some other moderates in the Senate. We're starting to see this. And so that first thing is the art of the possible, that we actually can make a change. The second thing is literally CEO pressure. Trust me, yesterday, Chevron, 98% of Chevron's shareholders voted for more methane transparency by Chevron. So at some point, you just have to start stringing together victories that can defy the toxic politics that now dominate our evening news. And the way to do that is localize it, make it digestible, and get it clear, and not to point too much to our own world. It is true. Go read the reports. If we stop the methane problem, because it's 80 times worse than CO2, but it's only atmosphere for a decade, you actually can lower the temperature on the planet while we do the deep decarbonization. And that just takes leadership. And right now we have a lot of politicians who are followers, not leaders. Leadership is hard. Change management is hard. Teaching a team how to win is hard, but you have to start with the beginning and you have to win the first game. And winning the first game is saying that this generation owes it to the next generation to solve this problem. And we need to cut the crap on the quarterly earning bullshit that they can't make these choices. They can. And we need to put a gun to the head of a bunch of CEOs and say, get after it. If not, you're going to get fired. And that's what's happening. And it's happening. Trust me. Go look at what Engine One did to Exxon last year. The investors are waking up. The millennial rebellion is starting. They're going to take their money and walk if these CEOs don't get a clue with what they're doing.
Thank you, Chris. And Robert, what is your take? How can we still enjoy our beautiful world, but at the same time be aware that something needs to be done and obviously make society aware of this?
Yeah, I agree also with the previous speakers. I think there's so much happening already. There's already a lot of awareness, not if we compare it to a few years ago, not enough for sure. I think things are happening, things are changing. I think that there's a huge space of further collaboration, because it's not something that one single sector and one single industry or a single change in the products can do, right? You really need to glue everything together and work in open collaboration. This is not something it's not of being better than the competitor in general. It's being, let's say, ensuring that the overall system gets better, right? And compete in that new environment. And I think that is really a shift of mind. It's a cultural shift, but also for sure the industry in general needs to undergo, and as fast as possible. And I see things happening. See today, many companies that before were competing in markets today talk to each other and see what can be done. They are still competing, of course, but they also work together. And I think this changing role that in certain areas you compete, but on such important things you actually collaborate are really necessary. And I think we are getting there. I also agree with what Chris said. I mean, once it's transparent and you see what's happening and the measurements are there, and this transparency, of course, changes also the behavior. And there's no other way of doing this. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. And Pablo, what is your take on this? How do we get there? How do we change the world, and how do we raise awareness?
Well, now I feel how Manik felt right after going through all the speakers, because I agree with so much of what's been said. So clearly people get motivated when there's a clear vision and it's an exciting one. It compels them, and it can be made personal. Real change happens when you can show the possible. And so it's all of our jobs to be able to show how these products and processes and innovation can be brought to market and lead to better things. You know, the light duty electric vehicle is a great example of that. There are people that are using these vehicles that will never go back to anything that's not an electric vehicle because it works for them. It's more efficient in time. The costs have gone down. And that's a momentum that I don't think ever gets reversed. And it works because it's very real, and it helps people do their lives, and they feel good about the products. And in some cases, the products may be even better than what exists today. There's massive efficiencies to be gained. The early day, will people pay more for certain things? Maybe temporarily, but if we all do our jobs well, with a lot of technology, innovation, and scale in the areas that will result in decarbonization, we should see cost improvements. We should see better processes, modernization, and everything that we're doing. We're very excited about the trucks that we just launched on the battery electric side. The drivers love them. It's changing their lives from an ergonomic, fatigue standpoint. They can do things in these trucks that they couldn't do in their diesel counterparts, like run air conditioning when they're parked, because in some areas you can't idle. These are great improvements in the quality of life of people that go beyond just a simple notion of decarbonization. Decarbonization will bring great progress in many areas. When people see that, they will engage more heavily, and that will drive even more acceleration of everything we've been talking about today.
Pablo, thank you so much. And we are at the end of this very inspirational panel, I will say, actually, the Webit Global Impact Forum from the title Energy Transformation, Innovation, Enabling Resilience. And we discuss all of this and more, actually, and I wanted to thank our wonderful guests. So Pablo Koziner, President, Energy and Commercial at Nikola Corporation, Robert Denda, CEO at Gridspertise, Chris Romer, CEO at Project Canary, and Manik, Suri, founder and CEO at Therma. Thank you so much for being with us today. And obviously, thank you to all of you for following this Webit Global Impact Forum. I'm Angela Antetomaso at Forbes. Bye-bye.